In 1999, a phone company controlled more of the global market than its four closest rivals combined. Analysts did not ask if it would reach 1 billion active users. They asked when. 8 years later, that same company watched its most senior engineers dismiss a small black rectangle from California as a toy that would never survive a dropped call. They were wrong about the toy, and the toy erased them.
Picture the shape of a telephone in your hand somewhere around the turn of the millennium. There is a strong chance it carried one name molded into the plastic: Nokia. The company did not start as a phone maker. It began as a wood pulp mill on a river in Finland, then drifted through rubber boots, cables, and paper before an internal bet on mobile radio technology turned it into something else entirely. By the late 1990s, that bet had paid off beyond anything its own board had projected. Nokia had overtaken Motorola to become the largest mobile phone manufacturer on the planet, and it kept climbing from there. At its peak, Nokia shipped more than 4 out of every 10 mobile phones sold anywhere on Earth. Its devices were not just common, they were trusted the way people trust a light switch. You press it, it works, every time, in freezing cold or tropical heat. The company's own engineering culture treated a dropped call as a genuine embarrassment, the same way a car maker treats a failed brake test. Durability was the brand. A Nokia handset became shorthand across dozens of countries for a phone that simply refused to break. Wall Street loved the story because it was simple. Hardware discipline, manufacturing scale, and a Finnish engineering culture obsessed with reliability had produced a machine that could not be caught. Executives from Tokyo to Silicon Valley studied Nokia's supply chain the way rival armies study a winning general. And here's the detail almost nobody remembers. Nokia's own labs had already built the future. Years before a rival company unveiled its first smartphone, Nokia engineers had working prototypes with touchscreens, full internet browsers, and app-style software running on their hardware. The company was not blind. It had already seen the mountain. It simply could not convince itself to climb it. So if the technology already existed inside their own building, what actually stopped them from shipping it? The answer is not the one most people give. The common explanation is that Nokia's leadership simply failed to see the smartphone coming. That story is comfortable, and it is largely false. The real failure was structural, not visual. Inside Nokia, hardware engineers held the senior seats. Software teams were treated as a supporting department, brought in after the physical device was already designed, not before. A phone began as a shape, a shell, a set of buttons, and only afterward did programmers get handed the job of making software fit around decisions that were already frozen. That ordering worked beautifully when the product that mattered was the plastic and the antenna. It became a liability the moment the product that mattered was the software running on top of them. When a rival's touchscreen phone finally reached the public, Nokia's internal reaction, according to accounts from engineers and executives at the time, was closer to dismissal than alarm. No physical keyboard, poor battery life, a browser nobody in the industry believed carriers would ever allow on their networks. Every objection was technically accurate in isolation. Together, they missed the point entirely. People were not buying a phone anymore, they were buying a pocket computer that could also make calls. Nokia's own operating system, Symbian, had won the previous era by being flexible enough for hundreds of different phone models across dozens of manufacturers. That same flexibility became a curse once software, not hardware variety, was what customers actually judged. Fragmented versions, inconsistent app support, and a development experience programmers openly disliked meant that outside developers increasingly built for other platforms first, and Symbian second, if at all. By the time Nokia's leadership fully grasped the shift, the company was no longer just late. It was late while still believing it was early. What happened next was not a slow fade. It was a decision, delivered in a single memo, that Nokia's own employees would come to see as the moment the company admitted defeat out loud. A new chief executive arrived from outside the company, the first in Nokia's history to come from a foreign rival rather than rise up through Finnish engineering ranks. Shortly after taking the role, he circulated an internal memo comparing Nokia to a man standing on a burning oil platform, forced to jump into freezing water simply because staying still guaranteed death. The memo leaked within hours and became public around the world, a rare moment where a company's own leadership described its position in language usually reserved for its harshest critics. The chosen escape was a partnership that abandoned Nokia's own operating system entirely in favor of a rival software platform, Built by the very industry player many insiders had hoped Nokia would eventually challenge rather than depend on. Overnight, years of in-house software investment were written off as a dead end. The transition years that followed were brutal in a way rarely visible from the outside until the numbers arrive all at once. Market share that had once been measured in double digits worldwide collapsed toward single digits, then toward numbers so small that analysts stopped bothering to break Nokia out as its own category. The stock, once treated as one of the safest holdings in European markets, lost the overwhelming majority of its value in the span of a few years. The end arrived not as bankruptcy, but as something quieter and in some ways sadder: an acquisition. The rival platform Nokia had bet its future on absorbed Nokia's phone business outright, buying the devices and services division for a price that would have covered less than a single strong quarter during the company's peak years. The Finnish flag that once seemed permanently stitched to the world's pockets came down. Here's the detail that turns this from a sad story into an unsettling one. The rival product that started the collapse was not a mystery Nokia failed to predict. Their own engineers had built something remarkably similar years earlier and quietly shelved it, because the organization built to perfect a plastic shell had no mechanism for recognizing that the shell no longer mattered. Go back to that number from the opening. More than 4 out of every 10 phones on the planet, once carrying a single name. That number did not fall because a smarter company outbuilt Nokia's hardware. Nokia's hardware, by every account, remained excellent almost until the very end. It fell because the company that manufactured trust in a physical object could not reorganize itself around a future where trust lived in software instead. The lesson underneath the wreckage is not that Nokia lacked vision. Their own labs prove otherwise. The lesson is that seeing the future and being structurally capable of acting on it are two entirely different things, and an organization can possess the first while being quietly incapable of the second. If you want to see this same blind spot destroy a company that once dominated an entire industry from the opposite direction, the Kodak story on this channel shows what happens when a company invents its own disruption and refuses to sell it. Watch that one next. But before you go there, sit with one more uncomfortable question. If a company this disciplined, this dominant, this technically capable, could build the answer and still fail to act on it, the failure was never really about phones at all. Every industry has its own version of the plastic shell, a format, a delivery method, a physical habit that customers have been trained to associate with the product itself, long after that habit stopped being the actual source of value. The organizations that survive long-term are rarely the ones with the most talented engineers or the deepest research budgets. They are the ones that built a mechanism for letting an inconvenient prototype win an argument against an entire company's existing business model, before the market forced that argument to happen anyway. Nokia had that mechanism for hardware: test it, break it, drop it, freeze it, and if it survived, ship it. What it never built was the equivalent mechanism for ideas that threatened the hardware itself. No process existed for a software prototype to walk into a boardroom and argue that the thing keeping the company alive was about to become irrelevant. So the prototype sat in a drawer, technically correct and organizationally invisible, until a company on the other side of the world built the same idea with the authority to actually ship it. That is the part worth remembering long after the specific dates and names fade. Innovation dying quietly inside a company that already invented it is not a rare failure. It is the default outcome, unless something in the structure is specifically built to prevent it.